In this segment, I'm going to show you how I light when I come to a location, like when I go to a client's house or any other location where I happen to find myself. Every time I go to a new place to shoot, the situation will be different. Sometimes we have white walls that we can use, and in this particular location, which is the Mountain Mermaid in Topanga in California, we have these beautiful textured yellow walls, which of course are going to be a little bit different from white walls for bouncing light off of. But I want to show you in a very simple way how I approach location lighting. And often when I go to a location, I use the existing light and I add a little bit of artificial light using just one light, and that keeps the kit really, really minimal. And yes, you can absolutely do this with a speed light and one umbrella. We're also later in the segment going to get into how I replicate kind of the intricacies and the really magical parts of natural light on location. So let's dive right in. What I'm going to show you first is, as always, when I show up, I've got my camera at 5.6, 180th of a second, and my ISO I'm going to put to 200. And again, I'm just going to do my test shots, and I have an idea of how I want to pose the model. So you just do a test shot. I can already see in my camera's meter that this is very underexposed. Good. But I actually love the light coming through that stairway up there. It's really beautiful. So that's actually inspiring. So because I'm at 5.6, 180th of a second, I'm going to figure out what I want my ambient light to be first. That's what I always do before I add my artificial light. And it's a really clever way it's a really easy way to not have to think about ratios and start getting your light meter out. I can just come in here, bring my camera out, and start working right away. So I'm going to bring my aperture down. Let's go to 2.8. Shoot portraits at 2.8 all the time of single people, individuals, no problem. Good. And I think that gives me a really nice, rich layer. I'm looking at the image here. It's, let me just do one more. Image has a lot of beautiful texture. The light coming from behind I find really inspiring. And we have this window here that's lighting up all of this really beautifully. Now, this is a north-facing window, so we've been really lucky with this location because we don't have crazy sunlight. If I had crazy sunlight, I would just put a scrim directly outside or inside the window, or hope that the location has curtains. Every time I go to a location, I'm going to look to find the spot that has exactly the right light. And there's an old saying, which is 90% of photography is moving furniture. And I think that's really, really true. So let's have my model come in, Mariana. She's wearing a lovely neoprene dress. Looks amazing. I don't think she feels like she's wearing a wetsuit. Okay, I'll have you stand, actually. Yeah, perfect. And let me move this bench out of the way for you. Perfect, right next to the bench. And I'm going to place Mariana. So a lot of wedding photographers, portrait photographers, you place your subject right next to the window. And I do the same to kind of get a sense of what's going on here. So we have nice light, but while Mariana is young, has no wrinkles, she doesn't have deep eye caves, sorry to objectify you in this way, not all of my subjects are going to be in that same position. And so I like to have control and bring artificial light to really control the situation. Again, I've figured out what my ambient light is going to be, and I'm going to check it now that I have Mariana right here next to my window, just to make sure she's not being blasted by an overly huge amount of light. And I think it's going to be fine. Yeah, exactly. And you can see on the screen already, the light on her is nice, but it's not as flattering as it can be. And the other thing is, it's wonderful to photograph your subject right by the window. I could put her right on the table here. Go ahead and so I can show this. And obviously the light is beautiful. But honestly, it limits my poses so much. I'm always posing people on a table by the window. It gets really old real quick. So I think artificial lighting really helps me on location to have so much variety of what I can do and place my subject pretty much anywhere. So honestly, 95% of the location work I do is as simple as what I'm going to show you now. And it really is figure out, okay, what do you want your base layer of light to be? If it's hard light, find a way to make it soft, or find a corner that's soft, I always do that. That's the best way to cheat. It's the best way to get your basis for your image. And then bring the subject in. Let's have you back over here. Like, I kind of like this because, in a little bit, I'm going to move this bench a tiny bit more. Lovely. And I like the backlight over here with the stairway. And let's just pop into one hip. Yeah, a little pose. We'll move through this and you can do all sorts of varieties. And just look out the window for me. Yeah, and you can bring your chin around to the window as well. Good, that's great. Wonderful. I'm just going to find kind of where I want a portrait of Mariana to be. But I love having my background be that kind of dark, like a little bit mysterious, and I can bring those shadows up in post. Actually, let me show you what happens when I bring the shadows up in my post-production software here. I'm using Capture One. It really starts, it's like this shadow slider is my complete control of my background. And the reason I prefer to do that is, Mariana, if you just step out for 1 second, it's a good little aside actually, as I'm seeing here on the screen. If I expose my background, quote unquote, properly, it starts to take so much attention away from my subject. So that's another limitation of using only ambient light. If you bring the exposure up to where it needs to be for your model, like in this photograph, I'd have to bring my exposure up a little bit. I start to have this busy background really take attention away from my subject. And I want to avoid that. I can always bring it up by using my shadow slider, but I don't have the opposite control if I expose it correctly, because I can't bring just the background down. But if I plunge all of that into the shadows, I can just bring it up in post, and voila. I can control what I'm doing with my portrait subject. You can pop back in here. And I can control the background really easily. So I'm going to bring, Martin's going to help me handhold the light. This is what I prefer to do. But of course, sometimes you don't have an assistant. You're doing this by yourself. Totally fine to put it on a light stand and do the same thing. So the basic principle, let's run through it just one more time. Figure out what your exposure is going to be for your background before you start adding in the light. If you do that, that will stop you from having to think about ratios or start like getting mathematical about how you want to light this, and just be a photographer, not a mathematician, which I much prefer. So I'm going to have my assistant Martin come in. Perfect. And in this case, I'm using the medium Photex soft lighter, and it puts out soft light, the name, like the name suggests. And I'm just going to start at the lowest power that the light will do, which is, we're definitely going to be able to do something like this with a speed light. And my intention here is, like if we watched the previous video, how we shape the face, that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm going to run you through a few positions of how I use the light to achieve different results. Generally, I'm going to bring the light in from the same light source that's lighting the rest of the set. Some people call that the motivating light source, which just means try to make your artificial light come from the same place that the ambient light is already coming from. That will make it feel really, really natural. The light on all of the objects, you can see it's coming from these windows. If I start to light from the other side, it can sometimes, not always, but it can sometimes feel subconsciously just wrong. People really notice, and especially on faces, I'm going to show that also in other segments, how we use artificial light just to gently sculpt faces. So what I'm going to have it do, Mariana, just turn yourself towards the window a little bit. Yeah, make your feet follow. Good. Perfect. And then you can maybe just do a little like pose like this. Yeah, we'll see what works. That's very nice. Yeah, good. And Martin is going to fight me here. He's going to have this light right along side of the camera. Perfect. Eyes to me. And again, I haven't like checked. I should probably put the trigger on. I was just showing you earlier that I was doing only ambient. So now I've got the trigger on. It's going to fire when I take the picture. Clients love this. Perfect. It's very nice, Mariana. Good. And oh, that's actually great. Wonderful. Yeah, so that's adding in just a little touch of light, and I can really control what I'm doing from here. Bring your chin directly to me. Good. Very nice. Beautiful. And now I can use the light. Let's go up. I'm going to go up 1/10 to 0.2 on this pack. Again, just ignore those numbers. They're completely arbitrary. I kind of think if you get any light, anything you have, it's just a matter of playing around with it. I don't think you need to get into too technical about what the numbers mean. Obviously, 0.1 is going to be less than 0.2. So I'm now at 0.2. And Martin, let me just go up to 0.3. And Mariana, stay in the same place. I like this pose and your expression very much. Maybe bring your shoulders to me a little bit more. It's the other way. Yeah, so I can see that dress. And maybe you can bring, yeah, cross the arms below that floofy bit. Yeah, that's lovely. No, it's good, as you have. It's good, yeah. Good. And just a little bit less, so bring your shoulders back. Yes, perfect, there. Very proud, like a string is pulling the top of your head. Yes, perfect. I think, I kind of feel like the outfit makes me feel like that pose is the one to do. Very inspired by this dress. Beautiful. And you see, as she's turned her head towards me, because the light is kind of now lighting her from the side, let's show again when you bring your chin more towards the light and then look at me. Beautiful. So when she turns her head, remember we did that cheap trick in the video that I shot in the studio with just the one light and the garage door. And we've just done that trick where I've turned her face towards the light, but I can use this actually to shape her light a bit more. Come here, good. So now this is really very side on, right? So when I take the picture, we're going to see a shadow on the side of her nose. I'm going to zoom in on that on the screen, but it still looks natural. Good. And I think we can actually get away with bringing up the exposure just a tiny bit on, I'm going to go to 0.3. We're at 0.3, so I'm going to bring up to 0.4. And again, I'm being very subtle with this. We're not doing a terrible amount of work with this light. Perfect. Very nice. Let's bring it up to 0.5. And as I go up, we start to see even more of the shape in the face, and it's lighting up really nicely. And it looks very, very natural. If you look at the highlight in her eye, it feels like very alive because we're just adding to what the artificial light is. This is all about subtlety, because if I can just bring in a little bit of this light, I can control what I'm doing, and it solves so many problems of where to pose the subject, kind of how to pose the subject. I can have so much more control than, you know, I like to take the challenge out of shooting on location. Using artificial light, bringing one light in makes this much easier. You can do this with a speed light and a softbox. You're just adding natural light and artificial light together. Perfect. All right, I think that exposure is perfect. And let me just contrast it. Martin, if you just I'm going to turn the trigger off for a second and just bring it over there. I just want to, so I can see the natural light. We're going to just show you the same thing just with the natural light. Yeah, so if you compare the two, I'm going to bring them both up on the screen here. We just have a little bit more control on the image on the left here, and I'm going to show you how it's a very subtle thing, but her skin looks much cleaner on the artificially lit image on the left here, and we also have control of what our color cast is. And I think a lot of wedding photographers will have experienced also kind of a green color cast from foliage outside, or a yellow color cast from the walls that we have here. And using my own light really helps me make the person pop out, have the right color cast on to really show the most natural skin. So Martin, we'll bring you back in. Perfect. And let's do the same thing and just go up to like 0.6. Let's see, perfect. Marion is very good at holding the same pose here. Good. Oh, I had to turn the trigger off. Thank you so much. That's why I have an assistant. Yeah. Wonderful. And again, my shutter speed is 1/60th of a second. I'm at 2.8 on my aperture, and that's because that's where I arrived to get the ambient light looking really nice, and my ISO is still at 200. So we're at 0.6. Let me just see what happens when we go like to 1.0, Martin. And obviously, if you have this on a C-stand, you can just walk over and do this yourself. Perfect. Beautiful. And now she's starting to really stand out. And imagine this, like look at what starts to happen in the dress. It just gets so beautiful. We're controlling the light here. It's popping out. You can really see the texture. If I go and let me shoot this at 35 mil, just a little bit wider. Beautiful. Mariana's very patient. Lovely. We have this is beautiful light, and the dress, even though the background is super messy, the dress really pops out and makes, like, really highlights the texture in her hair. She's got the catch light in the eyes. Her skin looks fantastic. It's really flattering. Let's bring this up a little higher and angle it in a little bit. Yeah, perfect. Good. So we can now, it will have a little bit more of a fashion feel, a little bit more from the top. It starts to really shape the bottom of her chin as well. Obviously, Mariana is nowhere near having a double chin, but we all have clients who have that issue. So bringing the light up and angling it in, and let's try that even more. Lovely. And it's going to feel a lot more like coming from the top. Lovely. And we start to have, this feels like there's a skylight or a light coming from above and just giving her face so much beautiful shape. I'm really, really happy with how this looks. Another thing we can do, and especially with someone with deeper eyes, this might not be the most flattering thing because you start to lose the light coming into the eyes. So I'm going to bring this down, and then Martin's going to kind of wrap in. I call this feathered, and then the opposite of feathered is wrapped. And he's going to kind of fight with me. I'm going to stick myself like into the modifier here. Beautiful. And it really, you see how much flatter I would call this, but it still has shape. So the light is much broader across her face just by virtue of she can see more of the front of this. I think that's also really clear to see in the camera from the screen at home. And it just starts to fill in beautifully the shape of her face. So then what we can do is bring your chin over this way a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And look at me. Yeah. We can regain that shape just by turning your head away, and then bring your chin to me. Beautiful. Very good. But this is absolutely so flattering to the face, to the skin, to the dress, to the hair. This is absolutely how I love to photograph portraits on location. It looks super, super natural. Let's do one more thing here. The backdrop is and can be a little bit bright here. I'm gonna show you the quick way of just correcting that. I'm at 1/60th of a second. I'm gonna just go down to 1/90th, and then to 125th of a second, and then to 180th of a second. And that just gives me a little bit of variety. And as I do that, let's have a look at the screen here. That's the 180th, 125th, 90th, and the 60th. So you can just see the backdrop just gets a little bit darker as we go along, and there's more she's popping out of the backdrop even more. So I'm at 200 ISO. I've done a variety of ambient light shots, and you'll notice, you just noticed in that when we went through the images, that it mostly affects the backdrop. So think about what I said at the outset. We're treating this as layers. So the ambient light is one layer, and when I bring in my light and I light Mariana separately, and I'm using the direction of the window as my inspiration, I get to control what's happening also just right here with my light. So it gives me a lot of control. Now, I'm not scared of shooting this at 2.8. If I was shooting a group or I wanted more of the background to show, I could go up to 5.6, and we'll talk more about how I would do that in the next part of this segment. But I'm totally happy with shooting at 2.8. It allows me to blur out the backdrop a little bit and really make the model stand out from the background. I've shot at 2.8 for portraiture quite a lot. I don't know if everyone does that when they shoot flash, and I'm not opposed to it at all. And I've also done that obviously because there isn't actually as much ambient light in here as you would first think. So I had to open up to get more light into the camera. And this approach is what I would use for portraits, weddings, senior portraits, even business headshots. This works really well in an office or any kind of setting, and fashion would work for this as well. What I really love is when we brought that light up above. I think that was my favorite look, and it just kind of gives it that feel, and the dress really comes out. So this is really useful and simple for all sorts of applications. Let's do the next set of this where I get a little bit more into using more lights and kind of building a broader location lighting setup. So remember, the previous shot we did, we were just doing a tight crop, so it's really easy just to use one light. But when I get into a bigger location, I want to create a little bit of story with the location. You know, I have this beautiful walls, I'm in this location house, it's such a shame to go so close and blur out the background, so I want to go a little bit wider. Of course, think about it this way, the wider we go, the more we have to control the light, and there's more of an area of light that we need to control. So yes, I'm going to use a bunch of lights in this setup, but each of these are just layers that I'm putting in. So you don't have to go get complicated into how, you know, oh, this is a 5 light setup or whatever. I think we're going to use 3 on this, I think. But just start to think about like layers of lighting, and it really simplifies how lighting works in general if you think about it as these layers that we're adding together. So again, we have my ambient light set up. Now, this is this beautiful stroke of luck. The sun is shining here in Los Angeles and making this beautiful light coming through down the stairway. I didn't know this was here, but as I'm shooting in this location and the sun's out, I'm loving it, and I want to integrate it into a shot. I think it's going to give just that little bit of romance to the image. Mariana is dressed in this beautiful gown, and I wanted to really highlight like the grace and the beauty of that and use lighting to achieve that. So again, I'm going to go over to my camera. I don't have the trigger on. I'm just going to see how my ambient light feels. So I'm at 180th of a second, f5.6, and my ISO is 200. So I'm going to just take a test shot here. Maybe I'm going to go a little wider, just below 50 millimeter. Good, so and at 180th of a second, I'm seeing almost no ambient light. I'm just seeing the highlight from the sun. So let's see, let's start to massage this into what I want it to be. I'm going to open up to 125th of a second. I don't know, you can just chill while yeah, perfect. And I'm just getting a little bit more light. Maybe I can afford to do 90th of a second. She's not moving around too much. And you see it starts to lift the ambient light there a little bit as we move into that shot. So a couple of things I'm seeing here right away on this setup is we have the highlight from the sun is super bright. The rest of the set is really, really dark. So that's where I'm going to control my artificial light and just bring in a little bit more light into this area. Now, what I could do is just set up a light right here, blast it on her, and light up the whole scene, but that will look super, super artificial. So I'm just going to take a hint. I'm going to take cues from what we have in the environment. And as Mariana sits here, I can see that this side of her face, even though we have a lot of light coming from behind here, it's only maybe, not even, giving her a little highlight on her hair, and a lot of the light that's hitting her is actually coming from this window, and that looks natural, and I just want to be able to shoot that without completely blowing out this highlight. So I think the easiest way to do that is we're going to put a light outside this window, which I've already got set up, and I turn it on. I don't know what power it is on right now, and I never do. I just kind of, I'm going to put my trigger on, and let's just shoot it. Remember, I'm at 90th of a second, I'm at 5.6 on my aperture, and I don't want to go below 90th because any little movement is just going to mess up my shot completely. So, let me do another test shot here. Good, so that's a light from outside that window, but it's still quite hard. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take a cue from the previous segment. I'm going to ask Martin to bring in a light to light her face. And that's why I have the camera on a tripod, because he's going to be in the frame. I use this a lot. And then when I'm done with the image, I'll shoot the same thing without Martin in the frame, and then I can just composite him out super, super, super easily. And I can only really do that if I'm shooting on a tripod. So Martin, come on in. We're going to light her from this side of the face. And actually, let me just step out for a second. I'm going to show you something else. As we have the natural light hitting her from this side, but it's very sidey. Now that I've added in my modifier outside, it's still really coming from the side, and we're never going to get a light that's going to hit the other side of her face. So I'm going to use that as my motivation. I'm going to use that as my inspiration, and I'm going to light her. Martin is going to help me with this and just wrap in so we get some light on her face really nicely. And I'm going to cheat as well by having her bring her chin a little bit towards the light. It's just a super easy way of doing this. So let's try that. Martin, go ahead. And if you do work with an assistant, you can kind of develop the vocabulary of this. So, like Martin, if you wrap a little bit more, there you go. If you feather a bit more, good. Pitch it down a bit, there we go. So it's just kind of, we discussed this beforehand, like how do we talk about these things? And I do that with my assistants when I work with someone new. Oh, beautiful. That's really starting to be nice. So one of the things I'm seeing here, Martin, just walk it, you can walk that offset for a second. I want to talk about a couple other things here. Good, I'm just going to do one more test shot. And you see how I'm building this layer by layer. So I've added that light from outside, but what I'm noticing is the light from outside is probably a little bit too cool. So I'm going to put a gel in there, which I like to use CTO, which is color temperature orange gel, or CTO stands for color temperature orange, or there's also one called straw, which is a bit less yellow, maybe a little bit more brown. And it's available online if you look for straw gel. I'm going to go outside to my light. And what we have out here, I'm going to just drop it down so I can actually get to it, is a 150 centimeter deep dish Elinchrom Rotolux. And honestly, I chose it to be out here because it's the biggest one I have with me. And I wanted, the window is a big light source, so I'm going to put a big light source out here. It would also work if I have a smaller modifier. I don't think that's a big deal. But as I had it with me, I'm going to use it. And I've got my gel somewhere. Oh, yeah. And this is 1/4 straw. It cuts out 1/4 stop of light. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. And it's got this kind of orangey, browny color. And imagine all it's doing is shifting the color temperature of the light to being a little bit more this color. So you can get these in every shade conceivable. I use 1/4 straw. And for those of you who've used gels before, I don't use full stop gels. Like you can get really thick red, green, orange gels. And I think they're just a little bit too garish. I use gels for subtle color correction. I have a YouTube video of how to cut them for Elinchrom modifiers. So I'm just going to stick that into my light. There we go. And I'm going to have Martin help me put this back together. And I want to just talk about kind of how I've positioned the light out there. I'm going to bring it up. So it's probably the bottom of it is about where my head is, and Martin's going to help me with that as well. And the reason I do that is I want it to feel like it's the sun coming from above, or natural lighting from above. And I don't need it to be in a perfect position because I'm going to add light with the light that Martin's hand holding for her face specifically. And the reason I do that with her face is because I want the subject to really, really stand out when I'm doing this portrait. And I want the scene to also be lit beautifully. Now, I've added that warm gel. That means that light is gonna be a little less powerful, but I don't think that's gonna be a problem because most of the time I have too much light and I want it to be a really, really soft light source. So now the light that's coming in here is gonna be nice and warm. So yeah, that's about right. And instead of angling the light straight in, again, if I'm taking a cue from the sun, that's coming from above. If you think of this as the front of the modifier, I've just got it angled down a little bit, and it doesn't really bother me that it's kind of falling on the floor here. That's what natural light does anyway. I'm gonna close these doors. Lovely. All right, let's see how that feels now that I've added that in. Lovely, Mariana. Yeah, just put the hand behind you there. Beautiful. Good. So that starts to be, that's good. That's going to light up beautifully everything in the foreground here. And I'm just seeing two other things that bug me. If you look over here at the back at this door, it's really got a blue tint that I think is quite distracting. And the back here is too dark. And I want to make sure we're balancing that right, because I think the story of the location is not being told as well as it could. So let's add a light in the back. Let's see. And what we've used for that is whatever I had lying around, which is the medium Photech. It was already built, so we stuck it out there, and I'm going to turn it on. And I know, it's a little quirk of modifiers, that the Photech is a little bit warmer. It puts out a bit of warmer light than the Rotolux, so I'm not going to gel it. So I usually correct when I'm using both by putting a little bit of warm gel into the Rotoluxes, and I leave the Photechs as they are, but we're getting into the weeds here. This is something that when you use your own modifiers, you'll figure out for yourself. All right, let's see how that feels. So now we have both lights firing from outside. And if my luck holds, that should correct the color cast of, yes, perfectly, that window in the background. And again, I'm going to just have a look at my digital file over here and see if I recover the shadows. Yes, beautiful. There's a lot of range. I can make that work absolutely in post-production. Good. I think that just lifts the background here a little bit, and it allows me something that you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have artificial light, which is to balance the really bright light that we have here. It's not overwhelming. It is quite bright on the floor, but it's not kind of jumping, taking all of your attention, and balancing that with what we have going on outside. And I'm still at 5.6 on my aperture. So if you were to photograph two people with this, you could actually achieve good light because you don't have to worry so much about them being out of focus. Good. So let's bring it all together. Martin, I'm going to have you bring in the light for Mariana's face. And really let the subject shine. And then Mariana, if you put your, make your body really long. So that, yes, perfect. Pop onto that hip. So you're kind of rolling forward onto your hip a little bit more. Yes, perfect. Beautiful. And it's really about the grace, perfect. Beautiful. Good. And just pull up a little bit more. Yeah. I think you could roll onto that hip even more. Yeah. Does it work? Does it work? Yeah. Good. You had it a little moment ago. Maybe you need to sit more on this edge of the table. Yes, perfect. And just reset the legs for me. Let's see how that, yes, there, that's it. That's really good. And maybe bring that leg kind of over and, bring it, just bend, cross it at the ankles. Yes, there, that's beautiful. Good. And then use your arm to lean on. Yeah, perfect. Good. But don't let your hip collapse. Yeah, there it is. Perfect. Good. Maybe you put your hand on your leg, the other hand there. Beautiful. That's great. Yeah, and nice breath in, make it nice and long. Make your legs nice and long, your whole body nice and long. Yeah, good. Beautiful. That's a really nice, warm image. Okay, good. Martin yours is also firing. Perfect. So that's lighting up the whole scene quite nicely. I actually think I could get away with opening up my aperture a little bit to get a little bit more light from everything. If I open up my aperture, I'm going to get more light from everything. That's not the case if I open up my shutter speed. Remember, because the flash doesn't care about my shutter speed as long as I'm within my sync speed. And Martin, I think you could make your light a little brighter. Let's go up maybe half a stop. It's beautiful. That's great. All right. And we're just going to do, usually for something like this, especially someone like Mariana, who's great at posing, and I'm not going to lose her pose on this, is I'm going to shoot a variety of kind of feathered and more wrapped shots. So we're going to just feather a little bit more. Yeah, and come a little lower. So drop it down. Perfect. Good. That's great. And actually, as I've opened up, everything becomes brighter. I can just use my exposure slider to bring that back down or bring it back up. No problem, so I'm not worried. But 4.0, this would also work at 5.6. In fact, I'll show you. This is what it is at 5.6, and this is what it is at f4. So now I've got a level of control that I just wouldn't have if I was only using artificial light. All right, perfect. So I really like this at f4.0. Let me just have a closer look here at the images on the screen. Okay, Martin, I think we can wrap it in a little more. Go in a little closer. So you're almost next to her. Yeah, perfect. Like what we had earlier. Yeah, good. Let me shoot that. Beautiful. And wrap in a little bit from there. Yeah, good. We don't have to feather as much. Beautiful. There it is. Good. And I think we can come down maybe 1/3 of a stop on your light, Martin, just to make it feel a little bit more natural. I find like when it's so hard on the subject, it doesn't look completely natural. Perfect. See how that feels? Very nice. That's really beautiful. Good. And Mariana, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to have you bring your face just a little in. Yeah, beautiful. Good. And eyes to me. Yes, that's great. I'm really liking where we're at here, but I'm at f4.0. So my depth of field is going to be not so deep. Maybe I want to shoot this at f8. Now, if I go directly to f8, remember, if I change my aperture, I'm changing everything. I'm changing the amount of light that comes in from the flashes. I'm changing the amount of light that comes in from ambient. I've still got my shutter speed at 1/90th of a second. And it's going to be super, super underexposed. But because I have my lights outside and I've closed my aperture from 4.0, one stop to 5.6 and another stop to 8.0, all I need to do now, and this is why I love having this kind of control, is turn up the power on all my packs by 2 stops, right? That's the beauty of kind of how to think about those numbers. So whatever number is on the light outside, I just put it outside, I turned the pack on, and then we just literally did a visual check. Is it light enough? Is it dark enough? Is it to my liking? That's good enough for me. I'm not getting too much into the weeds on what is the power of the packs and all of that, because I just don't need to. I can just test it with here. So let's turn up this light 2 stops. Perfect. We'll see how that feels. Perfect. Good. And then Martin, if you put that down and we could just run out and, oh, that's also kind of interesting. So while Martin does that, let me just talk about here what we have on the screen. This is, I think, not a bad image, but again, it really shows that we haven't controlled the scene. And I see a lot of this kind of work that to me feels very artificial. When you have such a difference between what's happening with the model and the background, it feels very uncontrolled. And I know that it's an effort to try to make the subject really stand out from the scene. I think controlling your shadows is that little thing that really makes you stand out from the pack. So Martin, give me a thumbs up. You've put both packs up by 2 stops. Perfect. So let's take that shot. So I'm at f8 now. And all my lights are firing. And voila, we have that balance of lights restored. That's really nice. Let's feather it a little bit more from there. And then when you feather it, Martin, just dip it in on her a little bit. Yeah, there, perfect. Good. I think that's really nice. Beautiful. So now we've gone crazy with a fog machine in here, and it's looking super atmospheric. So before the fog clears, it's beautiful. We're just going to do a few of those images. The same lighting as before. Oh, yes. That's great. Good. Marina, bring your chin towards Martin a little bit. Yeah. Good. Eyes to me. Good. And just pop onto that hip. Maybe cross your left leg over your right at the knee. Yes. Yeah. Is that difficult? You can nod or, yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Beautiful. Yeah. Very nice and tall. Very proud there, I think. And Martin, I think you could have a little bit less power in the light that you're holding. Yeah. You can see the fog move through this image here. Beautiful. But that's really highlighting her really nicely. Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. Marina, bring your chin in towards Martin. Good. That's perfect. All right. And then I'm going to just shoot a picture that doesn't have Martin in it so that I can retouch it super easily. And because I have it on a tripod, that's going to be super, super simple. So what if you don't have these perfect French bay windows that you can just place lights outside of? And what my approach would be if you have windows, let's say you're on the 5th floor or you're high up in a space like this, and you can't just put a window outside, I would just put a modifier right where that natural light source already is. So it's the same thing, just have it right here. You're just a little bit more limited because you can't then photograph the doors with your picture, but it's just a point of moving your camera angle to kind of adjust that. So bringing it all together, think about this as layers of light. It's not about how many lights I can add here. It's about making an image that makes the subject stand out, lighting her beautifully, making it flattering to my subject. And then I wanted a little bit more light looking natural coming through here. So I put a light outside the store. I didn't really get into too much thinking about which modifier. I said, what do we have around? Stick it out there, put it on, and then turn it up until it kind of looks nice. That's so much better than having a formula for how strong the light should be, because at the end of the day, we want pictures that look nice. So I'm going to put it at a power that looks nice. Same with what we did outside there. We're just using it to light up a little bit of that background and bring a little bit more light in. And that's kind of how I approach every single location shoot. Think about it in layers. So you can do so many little things that are subtle by lighting. And when you walk away from having watched this, what I want you to do is try this out in your own home. Put a light outside your window, put a light where the window is, and see how you can mix a light that comes in through the window by lighting from there with a light that you use directly on the portrait subject, maybe Photoshop it out. You can also, sometimes what I do is, let's say Mariana's face was in the edge of the frame, then I can have someone or a C-stand holding the light just out of frame, and then I just use composition to kind of have the light just outside the frame. Now, as I'm standing here looking, do you mind, Marina, if we do one more look? Because I think this would also be a really cool wedding dress shot. So I think we brought one. Is that all right? Yeah. Perfect, good. So we're going to reset and shoot this, kind of bring this all together for a beautiful wedding image as well. I was really inspired by this beautiful sunbeam, and earlier in the day it was hitting our set, and that's actually why I ended up adding in the fog, because I wanted to see this beautiful light coming through. It's not often that, I'm shooting in the studio a lot, and coming to a location like this, it really felt like I wanted to up the ante. And then it's like, this is really great with Marina wedding dress. I think it's a really nice thing to shoot as well. I've moved around a little bit, and we haven't changed anything with the lights outside because they're going to light up the set the way I wanted. The only thing that's moving with me is my light. I could have it on a C-stand, but Martin is holding it, so we can easily show you kind of different setups. And I'm just going to use the fog here to my advantage. Beautiful. To get fantastic. Bring your chin up a little bit, so right now we're having a kind of downlit moment, and maybe we could even come up a little higher, Martin, so you can, yeah, perfect. We're lighting down on her because I really want light also to fall on the dress. So the main point of light is pointing sort of to the bottom of her dress there, and it's feathered off her face a little bit. So I don't want to have downlight on people where the eye case, or there's going to be shadows in the eyes. So we're just going to have her bring her chin up a little bit to catch the light. It's a really easy trick also when you're shooting in the sun. And I'm going to shoot into this beautiful fog. Lovely. And I'm going to go quite tight so I don't have to retouch out the modifier here. Beautiful. Beautiful. Mariana, you can bring your face around to the light a little bit and then bring your chin up. And Martin, if you walk towards me without changing the position of your light, perfect. Then it moves. So imagine it's like right above here, and she looked up, she'd barely see the modifier, but as he's moving it further away from her, without changing the position, she can see much more of the front of it. And that means more light's gonna hit her eyes. Perfect. Beautiful, chin up a little bit. Yes, lovely. All right, you just got married, you have to pretend. Yes. Beautiful. You're so happy. Good. And we're going to do the closed mouth smile there. Beautiful, beautiful. Wonderful. All right, and then you can wrap in a little bit, Martin, and we want just a little bit more light on her. Perfect. And we're probably going to have to turn that light up a little bit as well because we moved it further away. Beautiful. Yeah, you can come up maybe 1/3 of a stop. And I'm just determining that by the fact that it's a little bit too dark. Just turn it up. Perfect. Marina, just give me a little bit more. Yeah, perfect there. Great. Absolutely beautiful. Let me use this fog a little bit more. I'm just going to move this. Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. And because I've built this nice layer of light that's coming through the windows, I don't have to mess around too much. I don't have to have her in the exact spot. I can move along with Martin. Martin, you could probably come up another 1/3. Perfect. So this is how I shoot. I find my way into the shot. You know, I build it, I change the light around, I try out different things, and that's why, that's beautiful. That's why it's really great to shoot tethered. We could wrap in a little bit more probably here. Not as much, split the difference there. Yeah, perfect. Marina, this is really gorgeous. Like a string's pulling from the top of your head. Yeah, just feel that moment again. Perfect. Yes, lovely. Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. That's really, really nice. And what I want to do, let's do one more thing just to kind of throw like a random thing in here. Would you just sit on the edge of the sofa? Perfect. And we'll ruffle that. I'll ruffle that dress for you a little bit. Just sit up a touch. Yeah, there we go. And down. Beautiful. That's great. Don't let it roll away. Yeah, lovely. Perfect. Let's see how this is. Okay, bring your leg out so that this is, yeah, there we go. Perfect. So we have a little bit of zhuzhing going on. Wonderful. Oh, yes. Oh, this is cool. Very cool. Beautiful, nice and tall. Look out the window for me. This one. Oh, yeah. Martin, just come away a little bit. Higher, higher. Yeah. There. Beautiful. I love that. Very nice. So what I'm going to do is, that's actually a really good demonstration of kind of what brings this all together. If you look at this image here, I actually want to have a little bit more of that ambient light coming in. It's just getting a little bit dark on the stairs here. So first, let me actually show you what this all would look like. Martin, you can just stand over there for a minute. You can just hang out there. Let's have a look at the set again. I just want to bring it back around to that. I'm at 1/90th of a second at aperture 8.0, and my ISO is 200. If I'm doing this with just daylight, I've taken my trigger off, only daylight. If I take my trigger off, the only light that's coming in is that of the sun on the top left corner there. So again, if I get stuck, if the light isn't quite right, I'm going to turn off my lights and just start again building those layers. So I want to get more ambient light over there on that stairway. And I'm going to be too lazy now to start building a light or doing some other crazy unusual solution. Instead, I'm going to open up my aperture a little bit. Let's see. And I'm going to build, I'm at 90th of a second. And I can't really go beyond 90th of a second. So I've gone to 5.6, and there we start to see more of that stairway. And let me go to 4.0. Yes, that's absolutely going to be so perfect. So now I've opened up my aperture by 2 stops. I'm going to show you what will happen when I shoot this with a flash. It's going to be way too bright. Martin, you can come back in. Yes, Marina, it's beautiful. It's way too bright, way too artificial looking. So what do? We turn all of our lights down 2 stops, right? I'm letting in 2 stops more light in my camera. So I'm going to turn all my lights down 2 stops. So Martin's going to help me with that. Well, I can just run and do it real quick. And the nice thing is it just has a convenient button that I press. It goes down 2 stops. And I appear magically through these doors at the back. Ta-da. Lovely. And when I take that picture, it should be really nicely balanced. And you can come lower. There. How does that feel? Beautiful. And that's actually really, really nice. And the great thing about this is I can just bring out my shadows to get the detail back in there, or I can just cheat. And Martin, come up a little higher and feather a bit. Yeah, and then walk back so you're a little bit over her. Walk back in the set, yeah, good. And then feather a bit more, perfect. And I can just compose the image so that Mariana's head doesn't get lost in that stairway. Perfect, but this is, yeah, God, I'm really liking this image, hang on. Beautiful. Good, that's very nice. And can I just do one thing? Hang on, I'm gonna do the 90% of photography is moving furniture thing. Let's see, can you try roll it with me? Just pull that side for me, Mariana. Yes, you see? That's what all brides do. Perfect, good, that's good, that's good. And then same thing. This is what happens when I get carried away. Okay, perfect. Yes, here, that's beautiful. And that'll be the shot that does it. We're using all the elements of this picture here together. Beautiful. Martin, let's turn yours down about half a stop. Make it a little bit more natural. Good. And then she has a light coming out the back of your head. Hang on. I'm going to just adjust that. This is, by the way, how I shoot. I'm always running around, doing these little things, very active. And honestly, when I have clients on set, this is what I do, because I'm like, no, we can fix this little thing, we can move that around. But my lighting, I'm not worried about lighting. Now, Martin is working with me. We've been working through this shoot, putting it together, as you've seen. I don't need to worry about him. I don't need to worry about my lights outside. I have it all set. I can just focus on my client now and giving her the most beautiful fake wedding photograph that she's ever had. Perfect. Beautiful. Bring your chin up a little bit. We're going to catch that light. Yep. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Good, Marina. And then maybe lean on the back. How does that feel? No? No, that's weird. That's fine. As you were was good. As you were was good. Good. And then Martin, I just want to try one little other thing. Could you just walk it out of set or turn it off for a second? I just want to see where we're at with my 2 lights coming through the windows. Perfect. And I'm constantly testing this as I'm shooting, and I can see, good. So what I'd like to do is we're going to do a little backlit so that we feel like the light's maybe coming in through here. So we're just going to add a little bit of light. So turn it back on. We're going to get in real close. So maybe bring the front of it here. Come in this way. Yeah, perfect. Marina, look at me. Perfect. And then we're probably going to have to turn the power down, Martin. It's bottomed out. Okay, it's at the lowest power. Let's see how that feels. Beautiful. Marina, perfect. Bring your chin over towards him a little bit more. Beautiful. Good. Good. And that's going to have that sort of intimate feeling. Beautiful. Good. All right, that's lovely. Let me just get a plate shot of that. I'll do 2 shots. So get in there, Martin. So if I don't have a tripod and I'm being lazy, which happens more often than you would imagine. Okay, let me just get down here. Hang on, I've got a flare. I'm going to cover that. Good. And then Martin, walk out. Good. And that's how I have the actual lit shot and the plate that I can use to get rid of Martin. So that brings it all together. And I think, that last bit really demonstrates how making sure you have sort of a good lighting thing going on gives you space to move around in the set and light your subject in various positions, and it can actually go quite fast. So if you're trying this in your own spaces, I think the main thing to think about this is slow down, test each light as you're building it. Think about each light as a layer, so you're adding in, and try to think about where's the light actually coming from. When you go and place your subject, or I try to place my hand so I can see the reflection of the light on my skin. Where's it coming from? That's where I'm going to place my light sources. And often in spaces like this, you're shooting at ISO 800, wide open. Using artificial light gives you a lot of that control. And we've balanced out that harsh sunlight what we had and taken a bunch of really beautiful images. I wanted to run you through how I'm going to approach the post-production for the mimicking natural light setup that we did with our model Mariana at the Mountain Mermaid. And it's just a chance for me to kind of talk about how the post-production process is going to work when I send it to the retoucher. We have some plating in to do where we have to bring in the background layer from when we were holding the modifier on the model. And I just wanted to show you how I work with that to get these images ready for post-production. The first couple of images here, I'm just photographing my base layer of light to see how that feels. And you can see I've focused on the foreground here so that the background feels like the way I'm going to have it when Mariana comes in and poses. And here we have kind of the daylight feeling. And again, I'm checking the daylight. I'm doing my little tests and seeing how it feels, trying different exposures. And then I add my artificial light in. And you can really see the difference as we do that. I'm going to see here, I'm going to go through real quick. Again, I've marked everything that I'm going to go through as 1 star. And then I'm just going to 2-star anything that I like, just based on how my immediate reaction to it is. I'm not thinking about this too much. Good. And again, nice comparison between the artificially lit and the daylight. I think people really run into this, especially with wedding photography a lot, where you have this kind of look on your images. Good. I'm not loving the stairs being so bright in the background. So let's see what variety we have here. But Mariana's killing it. And that dress, look at the light on that dress, just beautiful. And it's lighting up her face really nicely. This is an image that will work really well in post-production. Let's see. Okay, here we shot some more. There we go. And we moved around so that the stairway wasn't so bright in the background. Perfect. That's strong. This will work really well in post with just a little tweak here. Good. I think I had the image that I really liked, so I'm just going to skip right through that. She's being very friendly there. Coy. She's probably not letting a lot of personality show. That's a picture her grandma would love. Okay, perfect. So I'm going through, and then we go to the next setup that I had here. And again, I'm kind of getting an idea. Seeing it with your eyes and photographing it through the camera is such a different feeling. So I'm kind of getting a sense of how the setup feels. We moved various pieces of equipment around, and here I'm testing just the ambient light layer, and you can see here on the left that bright sunlight coming in. And then I added that one light coming through the window, and you could see here how on the right corner here it's a bit dark. And then Martin held the other light in, and then I think we're gonna, yeah, there we go. You can see it, the difference between just the light on that first window and then bringing in that light on the window in the background. So doing a bunch of testing, always be testing. Perfect. And then we add Martin's light for effect. Perfect. And then we shot a bunch of these. I like that. I like that. And the light's just kind of feeling natural. They're filling in. There we go. That's nice. Probably a little too strong. I think we turned it down from there. Yep. See, we turned the light down. That's good. That's a good character shot, actually. You see, that's the example of something that's like so artificially lit, and it looks like she's jumping too much out of the background. It's not, no one's gonna feel that that's believable. So we change the power of our lights, and it starts to come together. Good, and we're testing again, and that's when we added the fog. It just magically appeared, and bring it all together. That's looking really nice. Now, you see the camera is reading a different color balance, white balance between each of these. So I'm gonna kind of go through and ignore that for now. Lovely. There's that Mariana trademark smile. And of course, you can play around with the position of the lighting here depending on your subject. You know, if you're lighting from above like this, it's great for the under chin area. Perfect. So and then we'll come back to this. And then we shot her in the wedding dress. So I'm kind of trying her in different places to see how that frame feels. And you can see the cameraman here. Lovely. And that's actually nice. Yeah, and we just got a little bit of light on her face, and she's turned her chin over towards the window, so it makes it feel natural. That's lovely. We're just filling in a tiny bit, and then we increase the power of our light, fill in a little bit more, really highlight her face, and trying different angles. And again, I'm going through real quick and just seeing what feels right. Good. Because you know, everyone has this feeling, and me too, when you shoot a whole shoot and then you look at 1,000 images and you go, I am the worst photographer in the world. And then you go through, you make your selects, and suddenly it starts to all come together. You're like, oh, I only need one picture from each setting, and I actually work towards it, massaged each part of the shoot to get it just right. And then maybe it's the last shot you shot, but that's what you were working towards, so you achieved the result. And sometimes it's the first one. And this is nice. We've got a, oh my God, this is over the top Hollywood flare because the sun was coming through that window. But that looks really nice. Oh, I kind of like this, but I'm not going to use that. And then we had the light obviously too bright there, so I'm going to not use those. I don't think I like the flare, so Martin covered it with the light. Good, and then you see the light could be better, so I think I had her turn her chin, up and towards Martin. And then I photographed a plate without Martin in it, and then we tried a different setup. Oh yeah, that's nice. That's going to be good. I like that one. You see how close the light even gets sometimes? It's going to be really nice. And then I have it taken away for the plate so that I can just combine these two images and make, because obviously that's going to be a little bit distracting if you send it to the client with the modifier in it. And then you'll see here, I have a bunch of plates that I'll send to the retoucher to use if he wants to, so he can use those to composite out the modifier. So let me have a look at my two start images. Start from the top. And again, let me go through, let's see here. Oh, I like that. Good, that's very strong. I'm just going to check that it's in focus. Yes, good enough. All right, so I'm going to play a little bit with the color temperature. Can warm it up a little bit. I think I'm actually going to leave it almost as it is. Warm it up just a tad and play with the color in the midtones and the highlights, because we have that blue in the dress. I really like it, and I think it's clashing a little bit with the yellow in the background. And that's just because the dress is blue. So let's see what we can do here with the shadows. That even is nice, but when you change the color in your shadows, you tend to kind of wash them out a little bit. I don't want that. I'm not going to do too much in the midtones, and probably when I edit the highlights, it's going to change too much her face too much. So I might just, in this case, do a retouch where I layer the, like an image like this. Let's see. Like, let's say I do that, and I duplicate this here, so it's both the same file, and I would send to the retoucher one where the white balance is like this, so let's take that back to how it was shot. One where the white balance is like this to use for her, and then one where the white balance is like this to use the background. And the other thing it does, if you have a look at these two images, the thing, it's beautiful. Mariana looks fantastic, but the backdrop is a little bit distracting. And that's because yellow registers really strongly as a color, so it pulls the eye away. So as I take the white balance and bring a little cooler, it stops being so yellow and therefore stops attracting so much attention. This image should really be about Mariana and her expression. So I can use that to stack these two together, and it's a really easy job just to isolate her from the background. And that's what I would send as notes to the retoucher. But in terms of color and everything, I don't think there's too much more I would need to do here. I could experiment with maybe bringing the color of the dress. Let's see. But generally, this is just kind of fun to mess around with. Let's see how that blue, and I'm gonna just have that. Yeah, we can isolate that perfectly. So we could change the hue of it. Oh, God, just gorgeous. Like that is, I love that shade. It's beautiful. So you can just isolate this one color here. Make it really pop. That's actually great. And good lighting lets you do this. You know, we have the shadows filled in. It's not going to die when you try to do this. Like if you had these areas being complete shade, which they're not, you wouldn't be able to kind of use the full power of the raw processing that we have here to make this image look beautiful. But like, let's make that dress sing. And then I'm going to just take this adjustment and apply it to all my 2 stars for this set, remembering not to apply it to my color shifted one because I'm using the background there. So very simple. You see how it's changed the color of that dress that just makes it sing. I'm just doing that in the color editor. And there's not too much else I would change with this image. Let's go have a look to the next set. Again, I think I love when she has her head turned there. That's the one I'm going to use. Very simple. Let's have a look also at the fog ones. Oh, that's nice. That's so gentle. The way she's got her hand there. Perfect. Let's use that one. And probably my one note to the retoucher. Fog tends to show up a little bit cool on camera when the light hits it. So it's an easy fix. We do the same thing. We clone this file. We make it a little warmer. There we go. And then we send that to the retoucher, and or I would just layer those 2 over each other in Photoshop and mask out the cooler one. Perfect. And then for this, let's see how, mostly what I'm messing around with is the white balance. I think it's a little more natural here. If I just cover, like let's just see that. You see, that feels natural in terms of skin tone. It's gonna work really nicely. So that's what I would do. I've marked this with 3 stars, and then I'm gonna skip ahead. Let me find my 1-starred images here. And I should have a, there you go. And there's my plate. It's not the best expression on Mariana, but that's my plate. So I'm going to combine that with the image that I chose. Let's see. These 2 together, and you can see I'm just going to use this image on the right to bring, you know, so I have the detail on the plant and the wall and everything back here to bring that into my image on the left. I'm actually going to, there we go. And I can easily remove Martin and the modifier from the frame. I'm going to just plate that in. All right, let's jump ahead to the next setup. Choose an image. I actually really like this. I think I might use that if it's in focus. That's kind of pretty for her. Beautiful. But you get the idea. Similar thing. I think these are pretty good straight out of camera. We play with the angle here. Yeah. I would do a similar thing with those and just kind of find the one I prefer the most and not do too much. That's really the point I'm trying to drive home here, because we're already in a good place with the lighting. We don't need to do all this work. It's much more fun going out and shooting than spending time in post-production, at least for me.